analysis. Okay? We're going to talk about converting units, basically. And we're going to use a nice sort of step-by-step process so that you know when you're supposed to multiply, divide, and that kind of thing. And it's also a way to get you to realize what to do if you've got two units that you want to convert over. Right? It's all about using ratios and different rates and different conversion factors. And so we'll talk about all of those. So first things first, some vocabulary for you. Again, things that you want to commit to memory. Right? Make sure you know your terminology. Use correct terminology. The first thing is unit analysis. What we mean by that is the process used to change the units of any quantity. Okay? Used to change the units of any quantity. A ratio. A ratio compares two quantities by division, and very often it can be written as a fraction. Not can be. It can always be written as a fraction, but very often is, because it's the easiest way to use it. There are other ways to write ratios. I'll get into that some other time. But it just compares two quantities by division. And then last thing here is rate. Not the last thing. We've got a couple more things. Rate. Rate's a ratio that compares quantities measured in different units. Speed is a rate, miles per hour. Compares two quantities in two different units. Gallons per second, that kind of thing. Okay? A unit rate are the two examples I just gave you. It's a rate with a denominator of 1 unit, so miles per hour. We always talk about speed and how many miles you would go in 1 hour. We don't talk about your speed being 167.5 miles per 3 hours. We just don't do it. It makes more sense to make it a unit rate by making sure the denominator is 1. And we'll keep doing that here. Okay? And then finally, conversion factor. It just tells you it's the ratio of two equivalent measures in different units. It lets you know what is the equivalent of 1 unit in a different unit. So 3 feet is the same thing as 1 yard, just 2 different units. And we'll use those conversion factors when we are converting. It should make sense. Okay? For example, how do you convert 3.2 miles to feet? Most common source of confusion is, am I supposed to multiply or divide or what? And so unit analysis is a way to help you figure that out. Right? And so what we do is we take the unit that we want to convert and we're going to make it into a fraction because we're going to use a ratio to we're going to multiply into it with a ratio, and the ratio is going to be a fraction. So we might as well make the measurement a fraction. So we're going to put it over 1. Okay? Now, here's what I want. When I take this ratio and multiply it into my measurement, I want the miles to go away and be left with feet, right? Because I'm converting from miles to feet. If I'm going to take this guy and multiply it by a fraction, and we're only going to worry about the units right now, then I want the miles to divide out. When I multiply straight across, I want the miles to divide out. The only way that happens is that the miles are in the numerator in the first fraction, then the miles have to be in the, where? Yeah, denominator in the second fraction. So when we go to convert this, our ratio needs to have miles in the bottom, in the denominator, so that they'll divide out, which means the only option you have for the feet is to go in the numerator. Now you go to your conversion factor, and on the and you see there in the middle of the front page there is a box that has a bunch of conversion factors for you. So if you don't remember some of these, that's okay, they're there for you. Right? So what we got to do now is figure out what the amounts are that are equivalent between miles and feet. Well, from the front there, we know that 1 mile is how many feet? Yeah, Taylor?
5,280.
Right. So since miles are in the denominator, we're going to put 1 mile down there. We're going to put 5,280 feet up here. And so now that ratio tells you that you need to multiply straight across. And so when we do, the miles will divide out. We can cross simplify here. The miles will divide out. And so now we got to take 3.2 times 5,280 feet over 1 times 1 is 1, which divide by 1 doesn't matter, right? I mean, it does matter, but it doesn't change. So 3.2 times 5,280 is what? 16,896. And the only units that are left are feet. So we want our units to divide out, the ones that we want to move away from. And we want to leave the units that we want to move to. Right? Does that make sense? Questions there? Good. Take a look at number 2 then. Want to convert 11,256 seconds to minutes. Right? So we're going to create a ratio to multiply that by. Just worrying about the units, if we want to move from seconds to minutes, in the ratio that we're going to create to multiply into that, where are we going to put the seconds? Dylan? In the denominator, yes. Not bottom, there's no bottom. In the denominator. Okay, good. That means the minutes have to go where?
I forget what it's called, the top.
No. What's it called? Numerator, yes. Okay. So we just worry about the units first. Where are we going to place the units? Now we insert our conversion factor, right? Equivalent amounts. Right? How many minutes are in 1 second? Does that make any sense? No, it makes more sense to do how many seconds are in 1 minute, right? So we're going to put the 1 minute here. And how many seconds in a minute?
60.
How many?
60.
Right, 60. Okay? And so that tells you what to multiply straight across. Right, so when we do, the seconds are going to divide out. We get 11,256 over 60, and minutes are left as far as units go. So this tells us we got to divide 11,256 by 60. Yep.
Can we have like cross cancel or whatever?
Yeah, probably, but we're going to divide this out anyway because we want to put this into it's not really a unit rate because we don't have a unit down here, but it makes more sense to go ahead and divide this out to find out exactly how many minutes are there. And when you do that, I think you get, what's that, 187 point, is it 6? Anybody have a, is that right? If I remember from previous classes, 187.6 minutes. Yes, ma'am.
Is the 1, like, is there always going to be a 1 in the...
Yeah, if we're just talking about converting from one unit to another, yeah, we're always going to put this guy over 1.
And then, how do you know if you multiply or divide it?
Well, that's what the second ratio is for, right? It all depends on your conversion factor. It all depends on where your units are and your conversion factor, right? For instance, if we were going to, if this were minutes and we wanted to convert it to seconds, then in our new ratio, we want to divide out minutes. Our minutes would have gone down here, right? And so our seconds would have been in the numerator. And so the 60 would have been up here, and the 1 would have been down here. And so that would have told us that we're going to multiply the 11,056 times to 60. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's all about where, what units you want to convert, where you put them in the ratio, and that kind of thing. Okay, good question. Anybody else? All right, try one. All by your lonesome. Convert. Okay, so the way we do this is we write down our original measurement with the units. Write down the units. The units is what should make this easy. All right? And then we're going to make this a fraction by putting it over 1. Okay, now we need our ratio that's going to tell us what to do to convert it. But we want to move away from centimeters, so we want the centimeters to divide out. Therefore, the centimeters go in the denominator. And we want to be left with meters, so they're in the numerator. Now you go to your conversion factor. And your conversion factor tells you that for every 1 meter, there are 100 centimeters. Okay? That way, your centimeters divide out, and you multiply straight across, so you get 867.5 all over 100, and your meters are the only units left. Now divide that by 100, and you get 8.675 meters. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, good. Keep going. What if, instead of just converting a measurement, we wanted to convert a rate? Right? If we had a rate of 215 feet per second, and we wanted to convert that to miles per hour, how many units are we changing? How many units are we changing? 2. So how many conversions are we going to have? 2. Right. So we do kind of the same process, only now when we make our fraction, we're going to write this as a unit rate. So 215 feet over 1 second. That's what the 215 is telling you. 215 feet per second means that you're traveling 215 feet for every 1 second. Okay? Now, we're still going to use our ratios to help us convert. But like you guys said, we need 2 conversions. So we need 2 ratios. When I'm done multiplying all this out, I want my seconds to divide out. Right? So if my seconds are in the denominator in the original fraction, that means seconds need to be in the numerator for the ratio that we're going to multiply by, the first one. And since it makes more sense to compare seconds to hours, then we're going to put seconds here and hours down here. Also, when we're finished converting, we want to move from feet to miles. So we want the feet to divide out. So if the feet are in the numerator in the first fraction, then in our ratio, feet need to be in the denominator. And we had to put miles in the top there. Okay? So now we need our conversion factors. For every 1 hour, there's how many seconds?
60.
Nope.
Oh, wait, no. I don't know.
For every 1 hour. That's why you have the front of your worksheet. 3,600. How many miles, or how many feet are in 1 mile? Right? So we've got to do all of this to move from feet per second to miles per hour. So multiply straight across. When we do, these seconds are going to divide out. These feet are going to divide out. And in the numerator, we're going to be left with 215 times 3,600, and our units are going to be miles. In the denominator, 1 times 1 times 5,280, and then our units are going to be hours. They're the only ones that are not divided out. That's what we wanted. Okay, so when we multiply and divide and all that kind of stuff, we're left with 146.59 miles per hour, which is a terrible way to write that, and you can't really see it, but You get the point. You see that on your paper. Okay? Make sense? All right. We'll try a few more of these.